Buenos Aires, amigos, amigas. I'm in Lower West Ajijic, and I met this nice lady. Her name is Kristin. She's been to Mexico before, but she's relatively new to the lakeside area. She's adopted 2 dogs here, and she's taking
Elvis
them.
and Tino.
What are their names?
Elvis
Elvis
and Valentino.
and
Tino.
Valentino. Okay,
So Elvis and Tino.
Okay, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about how she got to Lakeside and why she's here. And she's really enjoying life down here. So would you like to go ahead, Kristin?
So I'm really enjoying life down here, and I did a lot of research before deciding on Mexico, and then even more research before deciding on Ajijic and the Lake Chapala area. Now, when we say I'd been to Mexico before, my dad was in the service, and so I had been to a few border towns in the mid to late 60s, but I'd never actually been into Mexico proper. I've been all over Europe, lived abroad, had an international remit when I was working, so I've been to a lot of places. Somehow Mexico had never been one of my destinations. And first of all, of course, the weather is magnificent here, and being a Californian and completely spoiled, I wanted to continue to be completely spoiled. The thing that's really wonderful, and I wish that more expats participated in this and understood what a deep part of the culture, the hospitable culture it is here in Mexico. We say, hola, buenos dias, hola, buenas tardes. Everybody says hello and wishes you a good day, a good morning, a good afternoon. It is, I feel, completely safe here. Mexico is a nation of laws. It is our neighbor on the border, and while there are crime problems everywhere, including here, they are de minimis. I myself haven't witnessed any, much less been the victim of any. I've had nothing but the kindest, most hospitable treatment from my neighbors. I live in a part of town that may have fewer expats than other areas. And I specifically wanted to live in a town where I could be a local and part of the community. So anyone who is considering a visit or a relocation would certainly get my vote of confidence for doing so, especially if you want to become part of the culture and part of the community, and it's really worth it.
Yeah, and you know, we were talking beforehand when I met you. She was very nice, very approachable. And I saw her 2 dogs. They're beautiful dogs. And when she told me she got them from a dog rescue, they're just so beautiful. And you take really good care of them, too.
Well, thank you. They take good care of me.
Yes, of course. And so that was, I think you were telling me you were in San Antonio, or am I?
So in the mid to late 60s, when my father was in the service, I grew up as a military dependent, and so I lived in San Antonio for 4 years, and we visited Nuevo Laredo, Juarez, and Juarez was just the most beautiful town. You know, that's the green side of the river, so tree-lined, you know, El Paso is kind of a big pink desert bowl, but Juarez has tree-lined boulevards and these beautiful colonial houses, and it was just the most beautiful place. Nuevo Laredo, not so much, and we actually even stopped in Del Rio once, which
I was there.
Nobody has ever heard of until recently with some of the issues that we've been facing on the border. As I say, I've traveled a lot and been lucky enough to live in different places in my life, and a culture, a warm and hospitable culture was really important to me. Great weather, because I'm a completely spoiled princess. And I absolutely love it here. After 2 months, I mean, even before today, I felt right at home. And I would make this same decision again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and it was nice meeting you, and you tell me that I just knew when I first talked to you, you were here in Mexico somewhere before, and you just told us.
But never for any never for any length of time, and never into Mexico proper. So it's been a real pleasure. And the ironic thing is, of course, that when we lived overseas, we would vacation in Spain.
Wow.
But my work never, ironically, took me back to Spain. And my work never took me into Mexico. I worked with Banamex, but over the phone and in visits that they made to the Bay Area. So As I say, I'm delighted with my decision. I would make it again in a heartbeat, and I this is my home now. So I look forward to years of great living.
All right. Now, I want to say thanks for this interview or talking and telling us your experiences. But can will you introduce us to your dogs? You told me their names.
Sure.
Okay.
So these dogs are brothers, so hermanos.
Okay.
And they had a third litter mate who was a foster fail with their foster. And this is Elvis, and Elvis is a blonde, and Elvis Presley actually had fair hair, and he was a heartthrob. And this is Valentino, who we remember was dark-haired, and also a heartthrob. And because Valentino is a little bit of a mouthful for a dog, his nickname is Tino. So we have Tino and Elvis, and they're just great. You know, they're still learning some house manners, and I actually found myself asking Elvis, but with a thought, what part of "this is not for you, don't you understand?" And I realized every part.
Yeah, look, that's great. That's great. No, that's great. You know, you adopted these two.
Yes.
Yeah, so you got some dogs here, and they'll keep you busy walking too.
Absolutely. We walk twice a day. We go down to the lake twice a day. Occasionally, when it's really busy there, we'll do a street walk or just for a change of pace. But we go to the lake every day. And that's the other thing. You know, I lived at the beach for a long time.
Wow.
And I get to go to the beach every day. The fact that it's a lake and not the Pacific Ocean is irrelevant. I go to the water twice a day. So in fact, a little bit more maybe than I did when I was in California. And the weather here is good all year, so that's not going to be interrupted by cold weather.
Yes, definitely.
And prior to coming here, I always had rescue pets, cats and dogs, and rescue collies were my breed of choice. Here, two things. I knew I wanted to rescue, and while I'm sure that there are purebred rescues probably in Guadalajara and in bigger city areas, here at the lake, that's not an option. So I calculated that it would be a mixed breed dog. I was imagining a dog who was in the sort of 30-pound range, but it turns out that big dogs are a lot harder to adopt, and they stay in rescue for a long time, and in fact are more often placed back in the US and Canada than they are adopted here. So I wanted to adopt these dogs locally because they were in rescue for 6 months, in foster for 6 months.
What a heart, man. What
No,
a heart.
it's not a heart. You know what? It's a social contract between us, and there's a quid pro quo on both sides. I get as much from them as they get from me. So.
Okay, I can get that. Okay, I want to say thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you, Chris.
And your experiences, because I know when I first met you, I know from talking to you, I knew you were in Mexico before. Although it was a long time ago, I knew you had experience in Mexico.
But I lived in Florida, Texas, and California for the majority of my life, and certainly the majority of my U.S. life. So not my childhood. Most of my childhood was elsewhere, but the majority of my U.S. life has been spent in places with strong Hispanic and Mexican cultural roots and exchanges. And so there's a familiarity, even though it was on the other side of the border, it still feels very familiar to me.
Okay, I want to say thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you very much. A pleasure to meet you, and thank you for doing this. Anything else? Any final thoughts?
No, have a really good day. Buen dia.
Okay, all right, adios.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you.